on. Okay. Okay. Who's Windows?
Toro.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
He needs to unmute.
Unmute. Right. I sent him a message.
Yeah.
And I see Tex is on. Okay.
Yes, she is. Wow.
I had to.
There you go.
Yeah, he's off now.
Yeah.
So since I couldn't read lips, Lincoln, what did you say?
I was telling Delbert he looks like Anderson Cooper in the hot seat.
Oh, yes, in the hot seat. That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any similarities, but I get it. Wow. So good evening to all. This is a big topic that John wants us to handle tonight.
I'm telling you.
I know. I told him already. I'm clueless when it comes to finance. And economics.
So in one of his premise, he and an article that he sent me seemed to suggest that because Russia has now demanded or is going to demand that the people that they continue to sell to in Europe and some of the other clients demand payment in rubles, that would mean it suggested that the US dollar would have lost 30% of its value. I didn't hear that anywhere else, and I don't know how that would work out, because given the fact that the US dollar is still the standard reserve currency, even though if Russia is demanding that payment in rubles, it's still being measured against the dollar. And yes, the ruble fell precipitously after the invasion, but it has recouped some of its losses, and that was expected. And so I think pre-war right now it's down about 30 or 40% thereabout. But I don't know how that even if the other countries were to pay in rubles, because traditionally people don't trade in rubles, so how are they going to work that out? In addition, both Russia and China have been very resistant to sort of begin to welcome cryptocurrency, digital currency, as part of that new bold area. But subsequent to the sanctions, there was some financial people, some of them very pro-Western, of course, who began to who suggested that digital currency, cryptocurrency, would be one way that Russia would be able to sort of get around some of the sanctions. And I think that obviously the Russian parliament, the Duma, was listening, because within that week, they moved to pass legislation in Russia to begin to set up some framework within which they can begin to regulate cryptocurrency. So it's going to be an interesting thing. I don't know what you think, Margaret.
Yeah, I think it's not just simply in rubles. In reading through the whole thing, because not just Russia, it's China, it's India also. India is one of the biggest importers of gas from Russia. So it will be both rubles and gold. And yeah, what happens there is that, so they have been kicked out of the SWIFT money transfer system. So what these countries are doing, they are setting up a parallel or separate money transfer system in which they will, and I think the Saudi Arabia and them are not against doing that either. Because if you notice, the Saudi Arabia, they are not totally on the side with the US in terms of raising output and all that kind of stuff. So they are all playing their own game. So what has happened is that through this thing, because I don't understand how these big brain advisors and kind of didn't see through this. They sell it in a kind of way that Russia will be squeezed in such a way that maybe Russia will fall within a month or whatever. But Russia also thought through that thing. So what has happened now, it may take a little while, but what they are doing, they're out of the SWIFT, so they're setting up a separate money transfer system. And I was just reading an article from a British diplomat, and he's saying it'll be difficult for the world to, the supply of gas from Russia, and I think it's the United Arab Emirates, it'll be hard for them to make up that supply in the short run. So for instance, the US, Biden has released, I think 181 million barrels from the strategic petroleum reserve. And it's keep going down and down, right? So as we said in the previous program, the sanctions are going to hurt. And when it starts hurting in the US, Biden is going to be in trouble. So somehow they didn't think 2 or 3 or 4 steps down the line. So while Russia is feeling the squeeze, more and more as every day passes, the West is going to feel a little squeeze. And China and Russia may see this as a way to kind of, as I said earlier, set up a sort of parallel money transfer system. We don't know how it will work, out, but yeah, the greenback may take a little hit, you know.
But that has been attempted. That has been attempted before.
But right now you have no choice. I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, as they always say. I mean, Russia has no choice now but to make it work, you know.
But you have to remember historically. Okay, let's go back to history, because all this has a history behind it. When Africa was doing all their business with gold, the West decided that the gold was worth too much.
Yes.
They found ways of breaking it down and putting poverty there. When you go back to the world's richest richest man actually who was from Africa was Mansa Musa. And he had gold. If you come back today and look at the amount of gold they're taking out of Africa every single day, they've bought up all the reserves. But then the government can still turn back and say, because anything in any country in the West, if you have it, when they're ready for it, they will put in their laws there and pull it back from you. Think of the Caribbean. All of the diaspora in Africa had their resources. We had the British Petroleum, we had Texaco, there's the LNG, liquid and natural gas plant that's in Trinidad and the southern areas. And they sort of bypassed that because we're a republic. They're not looking at us gaining, because remember, Trinidad, the Caribbean was very independent when we had these resources going. They found ways of doing business with like Russia and other places and the Middle East, so that the Caribbean will become poverty stricken. Now the tables are turning. Remember, the late Gaddafi, he wanted to have the gold coins, and they were against it. So think of it from then to now. See how the wheels of the gods grind slowly around, and it comes down to its time. So here's everybody scrambling. Think when Putin was meeting with the president of China, what do you think he was just there for Olympics? The game plan began a long time ago. Every single day, I could tell you, I get but just messages coming through from Europe about this cryptocurrency. So many people are trying to engage me in it, and it started very small, and now it's really growing by leaps and bounds. So it's really something that we really have to keep our eyes really closely to, and also on the continent, because I speak to a lot of people on the continent. What they have done is they do this they call it Remitly. You could send money in different things just like that from your phone. They go shopping and you see them at the stores. So we're sort of backward right now in the West in terms of this. But Europe and America and the presidents, they all know what's going on. It's just that the masses of the populations don't know about this. So it's something to keep our eyes really tuned in.
But Tora, don't you think that in order for that new sort of financial network or that new financial system to succeed would depend on whether or not the United States is able to keep its political allies and the subsidiaries, I don't know if that's the best word, but in a sense, together, because if the European Pact stays relatively intact, which is going to be challenging as we move forward, I think the only thing that they have going for them that we're moving now into the warmer months, so there's going to be a little less demand for fuel because for energy products coming out of Russia. The reality is that if people are cold, freezing, transportation has been affected, and all the other things that gets moved from point A to point B from fossil fuel. If those things are happening all in the middle of winter, it's going to be very, very difficult to keep that alliance together and keep them focused. I don't know how I would have to think, but Tori, you might be right. It appears that the big U.S. policymakers and advisors did not think 3-4 steps ahead, but that's something that's very U.S. and they look at what's going to happen immediately. Let's take this. Yeah. We think this is going to happen, and then
I'm just looking at, but not across. I'm just looking at the article from the guy at the interview. His name is Alistair Crook, Crooke, former European diplomat, right? And he says, in many ways, Europe has not sanctioned Russia, it has sanctioned itself, right? And he goes on to say, I don't see any sign that Europeans gave any thought to the strategic consequences of what they were doing, right? He says the EU gets 40% of its gas from Russia, while the US offer of liquefied natural gas will only cover 4% of its needs, and Qatar cannot supply the remainder, right? Mm-hmm. They go into these things without any thinking, and they suddenly say, we are going to divest ourselves from any reliance on Russian oil and gas within the year. And he asks, how? How can they do it? People are going to feel a huge amount of pain. Gas and electricity have gone up 50%. They'll probably go up another 100% before the end of this year. How are people going to survive with this? He asks, So he's saying, how did they go into this without thinking strategically, So,
but
he's speaking from a European point of view. Yeah.
How much of that rests on political protection in a sense? Because by and large, the European leaders who have joined with America in leveling the sanctions against Russia are themselves afraid of disturbances in their own backyard.
Right.
So so it might be more a political calculation than an actual economic one. But
right.
that Russia now, because having been made to exit from those established world financial systems, now they have to come up with something. I would have to think that they would have thought about that. The Saudi Arabia and India is interested in that. America has basically kept the Saudi Arabian the family in power. So right now there's some tension between the administration, and obviously it does not pay for Saudi Arabia to ramp up production beyond where they are right now. But do you think it is past the U.S. to make those kind of political calculation where they might threaten the royal family there to withdraw some of their military support if they do not play ball?
No, it's a love-hate relationship. Iran is a bigger enemy any day than Saudi Arabia. So they play with them. Yeah, they play. Yeah. Yeah, they're more concerned about Iran.
Yeah.
You know, but one of the concerns of the Saudi Arabia is that the US have now started to focus too much on Iran,
right?
And they feel sort of left out, and they talk with countries like Saudi Arabia, countries like South Korea, and a few others who are thinking now that having nuclear, some kind of nuclear program is a deterrent, is both a political and economic deterrent with people who might want to do things. Because the reality is, had Russia not had nuclear weapons, the US would have already been in Ukraine openly. They would have been in there openly. So how is that a calculation that you think that the MBS can make, that is he walking a tightrope between being sufficiently agreeable with the US but at the same time trying to buck the trend here and there?
Yeah, Saudi Arabia has been in this game a long time. They know to walk the tightrope.
Yes.
Yeah, the US will never let Saudi Arabia, the royal family, fall and let some mullah or some fella take over. They won't do it. Yeah.
And by the way, most of the top advisors, well, not most, almost all the top advisors who run the system on a day-to-day basis were all educated in the US.
Yeah.
You know, the US and Europe. But we have not heard a lot about Brazil in that whole new thing. What do you think is happening there? Is he just too concerned about political survival with elections around the corner, that he focusing on any sort of international tug of war now might not be in his best interest?
Who's that?
Brazil.
Oh, Brazil.
Yeah.
I think the Brazilian leader has his own challenges. I mean, he's rather unpopular. So I think he's kind of stuck in his own country, trying to survive. Yeah, so I think that's the problem with him. He's rather unpopular coming out of the COVID, the way he handled the COVID and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he's kind of in a dungeon, in a foxhole. So I think,
India is going to be an interesting case study, because historically, like you said, they buy a lot of petroleum products from Russia, but they, in the last decade, have replaced a lot of the aging Soviet weapons with US weapons.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2016, just about the end of the Obama administration, General Electric signed a massive deal there to build two nuclear plants. So how is that going to affect that? If India decides to sort of walk that tightrope with at the same time trying to maintain good friendly relations with the US, and at the same time sort of chart their own path forward. But also, how does that work with China? Because would they want to do anything where the Chinese would be the dominant partner, given their long political rivalry?
Right, because if you remember a few years ago, there was something development called BRIC, B-R-I-C-K.
Yeah.
BRIC.
BRIC.
Brazil, Russia, India, and China. They were developing this alliance. But leaders change. I think Brazil has been a weak link in that whole thing with the change of leader. This guy has been, to put it mildly, a total idiot, the Brazilian.
Yes.
He tried to be a kind of Trump clone, and he never really worked out in Brazil. So Brazil has been the weak link in that whole thing. It was started moving nicely. It looked like this new alliance was developing. But to me, the biggest problem with the Brazil thing is the leader. They just fall off the radar.
It's funny how that BRIC was more a concept than actual an alliance, because the term was first coined by I think it's Goldman Sachs Goldman Sachs banker who coined the term. It was not a something that the countries came together and decided but Brazil has a very good manufacturing sector. They produce a lot of things unlike Russia. So why would they be the weaker link in this period? Is it because of the politics purely?
Yeah, the politics. I mean, Brazil, just reading from a distance, the internal politics has been in turmoil, as I said, with this guy, and especially with his handling of COVID. He was sort of like a Trump. Oh, this virus is a fake. He's going around without mask, and so it has been a lot of topsy-turvy in Brazil since the breakout of the pandemic, and at one point he wanted to do something to change, to remain as leader, and all kind of stuff like that.
I have not done any reading. Is Lula allowed to run in the next election?
I know he was freed. I'm not sure where it stands now in terms of whether he could run or not. Yeah,
but I think there had to be a ruling from the Supreme Court that
I mean, the pandemic kind of lost track of the Brazilian real politics as it was happening because of the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. So maybe something we need to look into as we go forward. It
may just be that the rest of the world really don't care. The majority of the world doesn't, and because somebody pointed out some time ago that when you look at how people voted in the UN, the majority of the world either abstained or just didn't care.
Yeah.
In terms of population size and numbers, the majority of the world, because the countries who abstained basically comprise the bulk of the people in the world. As you see it, it's not our war, that is their war, and let them deal with it. I think too with Brazil, I don't know, how much they factor in terms of relations, but China and India, there exist tensions between those two. And remember that there were skirmishes between them a couple of years ago on their border. And certainly I don't think that the Indians necessarily want to see, remember China has been expanding its role in that part of the world and want to increase its sphere of influence there. And I'm not sure that is something that India necessarily wants. So that is something, again, that, they may be playing this, a certain way.
Well, how important is it? Because the growth, so there's this school of thought that believes that in order for China to maintain any kind of stability in their country, that they must annually do that better than 6-7% annual growth, because if they don't have that, could result in disturbances at home. So if you have Western economies in decline, or I don't want to use the word collapsing, but in decline, and where with inflation where it is now, how and supply chain issues, how does that affect China? Isn't it in China's interest to almost ensure that you have continued economic growth and expansion in Europe and certainly in the United States, or that can have some negative consequences back home?
But you realize something that the US President Biden, they recently had an announcement where they say they're going to open all the different industries that China usually supply, homemade, made in the USA. So I'm sure China is scrambling for a strategy to cover the losses that they will not be getting. Then you have to look at the other part of it where, OPEC, that OPEC pact, you have to look at the Arabs and Israel, the US and Israel. So it's a whole, and India is playing the game well, because it's a chess game. It's a high chess game that's taking place right now. You know, think of all the byproducts we normally get from oil. How are we going to, you know, replace it? What are we going to replace it with?
India also supplies to the major airline manufacturers in the West, both Boeing and Airbus.
Yeah.
They supply a lot of spare parts and other components. So
that's interesting.
Another thing that India does supply to is the manufacturing of pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
But India is an interesting case, right? Because even before this thing happened, I've been looking at India, and they have been positioning themselves because India believe, and rightly so, they were undid by Britain. They were way ahead in terms of a civilization, and they believe that they should be playing a bigger role on the world stage. And while a lot of people have been focusing on China, India has been quietly positioning itself to take that position, right? So, for instance, if you look back when the pandemic broke out, India was manufacturing vaccine and they were giving vaccine free to the world and all that kind of stuff, right? If you look at India propaganda machinery, there's a whole network, they call itself WION. That's basically Indian, they do the same thing like BBC does and VOA used to do, right? I was listening to another guy the other day and he said point blank, India deserves to have a seat at the UN Security Council.
I believe that. I agree with that.
Right. So what I'm saying is, while a lot of people, and India is glad for that, while they're focusing on China, China is taking over the Caribbean and taking over the world, India has been quietly positioning itself to play a larger role. So this war is happening in Ukraine. They are now taking either side. They're staying in the middle and trying to find a way up so they could play, I don't know, in the end, maybe a mediator, maybe some kind of role, but India is quietly moving up the middle to play a bigger role on the world stage. They definitely have a plan.
Yeah, that's interesting, Doctor, considering that historically, remember, they had a non-aligned position.
Right.
And were basically the founders of the non-aligned movement. Particularly when you had the Cold War. So that's an interesting, observation there from Toro.
Yeah, we need to keep an eye on India. I mean, they say, okay, look at the shiny object over there, Russia and China. But they are doing so, they are positioning
But then the
themselves.
problem you have, but I don't know that I necessarily want to deal with the India under Modi either.
Yeah, he is. That because he has.
Another interesting thing we should look at as people from the Caribbean, and we always, in terms of Caribbean people and our leaders, we always reactive. And so we are discussing it tonight, the economic fallout, the banking system, how it will affect North America, European countries, right? Inevitably, we know this will have an impact on the Caribbean.
Absolutely.
Caribbean leaders every day should be setting aside a slot of time where they could meet virtually to discuss this thing is coming. It's like a hurricane, and the meteorologists tell you, listen, the hurricane is coming between Monday and Wednesday. So and so, get ready, buy your flashlight, buy your watch and stuff like that. We know this thing is going to hit the Caribbean. To me, these guys should be sitting down every day, setting aside a session and deciding how we're going to handle this thing. We know we can't become self-sufficient in food overnight. I know every time there's a crisis, we talk about eat what we go, plant what we go, whatever it goes, one way or the other. That doesn't happen overnight, right? We got to find a way to stockpile food in whether it's River Sally, one in Paradise, one in the Caribbean. Them fellas had a big job. They had a big advisors. They're supposed to be sitting down right now and start to think ahead how we're going to handle this thing as it begins to get worse. I mean,
but Toro, you talking about is coming. It is not is coming anymore. It is
coming a little harder.
It is there right now. In case you don't know that, Toro, prices are going up and they're up I mean, and it's going up on basic things. I mean, for example, the price of flour, which is a basic staple, went up recently.
Where?
You know? And in agricultural products, you have people who are talking about cost of fertilizer, for example, has suddenly doubled and tripled in some cases. So it's not a matter of is coming, it is here.
Right.
You know? So
the other thing, sorry. Go ahead. the other thing, if you go to the grocery stores like Costco and those big places and Walmart, the old packages pre-pandemic, you would get more for your money. Yes. Now they've cut everything down. Listen, I wanted to show you something. I just had it here, and if I could show you, hold on. I'm going to show you two. Okay, this is what the ginger ale bottle came to. Okay, so now they give you a 300-liter bottle, but it's way less. Hold on a second. I have to get this for you. Keep talking. My grandson bought a new one today. It went down in size again. I almost passed out. Hold on.
No, she's not kidding.
Yeah, the companies have been very reactive to that. So
yeah, because even Procter & Gamble here had announced one thing, for example, that they were going to be cutting back on the size of toilet paper. So you would be getting less toilet paper for either the same or more money than you were paying. So anything that was pre-pandemic or pre this set of production would be larger, and then everything's coming smaller.
Yeah. But
exactly.
Many of the retailers and certainly the distributors have been
one is bigger than the other. In the space of 1 month, this one, they say the same amount of liters, but one holds less than the other.
Yeah.
I could not get over them. And they think that they could fool us by saying, yes, it's 300 mLs. It's not. It's about 240. Okay, this one is about 240.
I think some of the supply chain issues, many of the manufacturers and certainly distributors have been waiting for that opportunity to raise prices, because at current numbers, inflation is running at about 7.5%. But in many cases, they have increased their prices by 30 to 50%.
Yeah.
Okay, and because we're in this sort of vulture capitalism, lawless capitalism era, and the West generally, and certainly in the United States, who have not sort of encouraged or done price control, how is that going to play out? I mean, I know the Federal Trade Commission, and there may be one or two other agencies at the federal level, and certainly some of the state who has jurisdiction over price gouging. But would they have the sort of bandwidth? Would they have the sort of human resource capital right now to police that? Because there's some serious price gouging going on in different and especially in neighborhoods where people who can least afford it live. How is this all going to play out? You know, and like Toro so correctly suggested, the sanctions did hit Russia. It appears it's going to bite us in living in the West.
Not that it appears, it is going to. I mean, nobody escapes unscathed from this.
No.
Nobody does. When you impose sanctions, I mean, both the person imposing and the person who is imposed upon hurts in some way or the other.
Yeah,
I guess we'll have to talk about it in terms of degree. I mean, to what degree one is affected by it, but I think inevitably everyone is affected by it.
That's true.
Toro, you spoke about the need for our Caribbean leaders to have this sort of working policy sessions that would sort of look at these things beyond just on the surface and see how, as a region, we'll be able to deal with those challenges. Some of them they all exist now, but like you said, they're going to become increasingly more difficult for people to cope with. The CARICOM has some standing committees that are supposed to be doing exactly that, but outside of Barbados, and I have my own problem with that, what's happening there. There are no other real leaders in the Caribbean. There are no other managers in the Caribbean showing any real leadership in those areas. How because, okay, if we standing still, which we seem to be doing in the Caribbean now, and the world is moving ahead, that equals us in reverse. How is that going to affect our people as if prices skyrocket between now and the end of the year? I mean, it was predicted that hunger rose almost 40% throughout the region during the pandemic, and it seems like now, given that we went from pandemic to major European conflict, will have worldwide implications.
Yes.
That the Caribbean may not have had any time to breathe and to react to it. What do you think is the best advice that we can sort of suggest to our Caribbean leaders?
Well, at the political level, as you mentioned, Mia Motley is the most vibrant and active leader right now. And in crisis, a leader is supposed to really show the colors and take a leadership role. So if anybody is to take a leadership role in mobilizing the other leaders, I would say probably she should take the lead first and try to bring, and I think she may be the CARICOM chair, if I'm not mistaken, right now, right? Mm-hmm. But the other thing, we keep focusing a lot on government and politicians and leaders. We have a whole bunch of economists and stuff in the region who are trained at big universities in the US and Europe, right? Mm-hmm. But for some reason, they kind of get a job either with government or in the private sector. Mm-hmm. Why can't they, for example, right, come up with some ideas and say, okay, let's present it somehow to our country leaders at the CARICOM? So while we always focus on our leaders, and oftentimes the focus on leaders are by people who don't like the current leader and the feel that another one should come in, and when the other one come in, he faces the same problem, right? But to kind of shift the focus a little bit, right? We have well-trained minds in the Caribbean, economic mind, policy planners, whatever. We have to, at some point, start calling them out and tell them, listen, you guys, I mean, because a politician may be a politician. Let's say Keith Mitchell trained as a statistician. He's not an economist, right? So even though he's a political leader and the buck stops with him, right? But we have finely trained economists, right? Who have worked in Europe, trained in Europe, trained in the US, Canada, worked in Canada and the US. They too can come up. They may understand the situation in an economic and financial sense better than any of us on this panel here tonight. So maybe they can come up with ideas as to how to weather the storm in the short, medium, and long term. You know?
Okay.
Sitting here, we could only, throw out ideas from an observational point of view or basic experience about things. But I believe we should start calling out some of the well-trained people, the PhD and masters in the Caribbean, to do a little more heavy lifting, especially in crisis times like this, you know.
And you don't see sort of major policy statements or big tying into what you say, especially because UA is considered a really respected institution worldwide. It gets really good billing worldwide. It measures up very, very, very well against other top universities from around the world. But yet still, you don't see that depth in debate and conversation coming from the major departments at UE, speaking towards some kind of new economic model for the Caribbean.
Yeah, because I think what has happened with us in the Caribbean, we will set up a compartmentalized kind of system in the Caribbean. So for instance, the British say, okay, you have a public service and the permanent secretaries are there forever, no matter which government changes. right? Which is impossible because I know Del Monte is a NDC. He's a permanent secretary. I have an agenda as an NMP, but Del Monte will stay no matter what happens. Okay, lead the ordinary public servants, right? Then again, you have a small population and you're telling people, well, if you're working in the public service, you can't involve in politics. We have limited talent already.
Exactly.
You're cutting off a whole bunch of talent. The other part of it, too, going back to what we were talking about, how they train us is you train as an economist, you get your economic degree, and you go back home and you get a job and you sit at home. You don't come up with policy things and look, no think tanks in the Caribbean, nothing. We remain in a box forever and ever. You tell a man, listen, boy, me getting involved in that now, boy, that kind of stuff. We have to break out from that whole colonial structure. Everything is so regimented, You work in the public service, you keep quiet. You don't get involved in politics. But then guys have to break out from that. They have to break out from that thing if we have to move forward.
Okay, so what is the hierarchy in the Caribbean? Because I don't know much about the hierarchy of parliament in the Caribbean. Because where Canada is concerned is this: the prime minister's there, he has his cabinet. There's a opposition, and between both of them, they vote on different resolutions, and then they get the mandates. The mandates are passed down to the ministers in the provincial, and then from the provincial, the mandate and the money for the projects go down from the federal to the provincial, and the provincial feeds the municipal, which is the local, from it. So how does it work in the Caribbean?
It works squarely on political patronage.
So where are the strategists? Where are the economists? Where are the think tanks? Where are they?
There are none. And I think, Toro, I hear everything that you say. I mean, there are valid points that, yes, there are people there who are trained and who should be doing something. But I think we need to face the reality about the Caribbean too. Mm-hmm. That there's an anti-intellectual movement in the Caribbean.
Very much
that
so.
Is very, very
point taken.
All right. So it really doesn't matter what you say. It's not going to happen. So there's a lot of complications. There's the anti-intellectual flavor. There's also laziness on the part of some people. There's a certain level of complacency that sets in when people get in and, like if you're in academia here, right? Mm-hmm. It's, there's a term they talk about publish or perish.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in the Caribbean. So for example, you get into UE and you get tenure, you could sit down and put your feet up on the desk and do absolutely nothing after that. Your job is secure. Nobody expects anything. Nobody's going to demand anything from you. All right. So, and it comes back to that. And I know that Toro and they have had these debates before too about, sort of getting a kind of meritocracy in place as opposed to what we currently have. People you need to reward people for what they do, not simply because, I'm such and such and as such. If you're not contributing to something, you're not making it better, you're not advancing a cause, and you need to step out. Wow. You just need to go. It's as simple as that. There's no emotional thing behind it because we need to develop a country. We need to provide for people. We need to food security. We need to provide jobs. We need to do all of these things. And you can't do that with a bunch of people who just sit there and do absolutely nothing and yet still get compensated. On the question of the public service, Tori, you sort of like need that barrier. You need that level, that institutional memory, because remember, you have a system where every time a different party comes in, things could always change. That's what the public service is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. The problem is the public service doesn't work as it ought to work. It should not be politicized. It's the same thing that happens here. You have the same public service who work here as well, within the same role. So it doesn't matter whether you have a Republican president or a Democratic thing there. When they come in, those things are still supposed to run as they ought to run, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is it doesn't work that way, right? And So when they tell a public servant, for example, that they can be political, what they mean is that you do not get out on a political platform and campaign. But you cannot tell a public servant he can be political, because obviously he or she will support a party. They have to vote like everybody else.
That's right.
Right. But we're just saying that you don't get out there and actively campaign. You can't do that.
Right.
You know?
But just to clarify.
But I would restructure the public service so that people hold their positions based on merit. They get their jobs based on merit. You know, performance reviews and everything else, promotions and all of those things should be based on merit. People should be rewarded based on what they do, not simply because you walk inside, you get a government job and you figure that, okay, the union go fight for you and this is this and whatever, and I have a government job and a day until I get my pension. That is what it is. That is what it is. Wow. Everybody is, I just waiting on my pension. You know, you want a government job so you get a pension. That's not what you want the job for.
So,
but just to clarify, just to clarify before I go on, Daphne, I'm not talking about cleaning house in a public service. I'm talking at some of the most very senior level where a project could be held up by the person. So for instance, in the US, chief of staff and some senior position, they go because these are positions that could make or break a project by the government. So I'm not talking about cleaning house when the government comes. I'm talking about, because I've seen it. I mean, a project comes on a PS desk and a PS could say, no, that is not going. And everybody's saying, the minister isn't doing this to the government, but the PS, after the minister brings that proposal to the PS, they can decide when it's moving, if it's moving, and when it's not moving. Such a position should not be held by somebody, let's say the minister or the government interest. I don't care what nobody says. Right? Cabinet secretary position. I mean,
I understand. I understand what you're saying, Toro, and I mean, I see the argument that you're making, and certainly there is validity to that argument. But I also don't want to be reporting to a minister either. Right.
But there has to be some balance. There has to be some balance.
So,
And the other thing is, it's a complicated thing because, again, all you said, Margaret, is true. But also, we have to remember in our system, the system as set up does not reward creativity and innovation.
I agree.
It's not, and especially
and that too is a reason for the mediocrity in the system.
Right.
Because a lot of good people, excellent people, get frustrated and just leave. So what you have, because the cream rises to the top, so the cream is gone. And because somebody else recognizes the cream, whether it's in Grenada or in the private sector or in some other country, and they decide, you know what, I'm skimming that cream, you can keep the dregs. Sorry to put it that way, but that's exactly what has happened. So what's left are the dregs.
And the second part of that, while they're not rewarding innovation and creativity, they also punish if you make a little mistake. So if you make a mistake, you either punish or you shame. Everybody say, boy, they'll put your ass in there, you mess up. He's making people spend an extra $500. So they don't reward and they punish and shame if the thing don't work good.
Exactly.
That's
Pastor
unreal.
You wanted to come in?
I'm just trying to understand, because if you have procurement, that department for procurement, it does so much. And even if the minister, he sends down his letters, the office staff that, are responsible are the ones who is going to be executing what his signature says, So is that how the, Margaret, when you talk about the anti-intellectual agenda, do you mean that if someone comes in as a strategist that they're not allowed to give their feedback on strategy or on the economy, what is wrong, what is right? Why hire them? Just to sit there? They would be frustrated.
So sometimes that happens.
For instance, I was an employment equity counselor for the province, which the bill was rescinded. But what happened was I had to go into the communities and ensure that the people in the communities are being, the employees in the community are being equitable in their hiring practices. And if they did not, they were fined.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter who you are, and we had a staff. So if So what are they doing? I'm trying to figure this.
So the anti-intellectualism manifests itself in several ways. From open attacks against people who have gone abroad and study and come back to work, right?
Yeah.
There's open attacks in terms of dissing them, or them come back here with this, that, and the other, or they go to university and or books or sense made before book. You get these kind of things. So you can get those open attacks at you.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So you could get those open attacks, and I mean really open attacks, and then you could also get it in the form that people would simply resist. So somebody could make a recommendation, and they could just ignore it and resist it, not do it. So it manifests itself in multiple ways. Open attacks, I think, is the blatant open attack against it, though, I think is probably most common, more so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Tora, I wanted to tie back to that point that you were making earlier on, because our public servants are so limited in terms of what they can actively become involved in. We immediately, it's almost like having a family and saying, I'm only going to support half of my other family. The other half they can fend for themselves. I was having a conversation with a minister in government in this current administration in I think 2018 or 2019, and we were speaking about exactly that issue. And I said, that listen, we have a problem in Grenada. You may have good people in the public service now who probably could eventually rise to the top and become serious policy makers. Mm-hmm. So why don't we have a system where, let's say you're a permanent secretary or a director or manager, you want to get involved in politics. You're not forced to resign that job. But let's say, and then it ties back into the question, because we don't really know when an election can come or not. It's all up to the whim of the prime minister. But let's say people were given an opportunity, 90 days before election is due, they can take a leave of absence. If they run and they succeed, fine, they go on to it. If they didn't, within 45 days or 60 days or some kind of accepted period, they are able to return to their job or something equivalent. And he just looked at me, I could walk on my company floor, go out on the floor and engage with an employee about an issue. And they would talk to me. They would say, Mr. B, no, I don't think this. Oh, yes, this is a good idea. Oh, Mr. B, we need to look at it. What I find, and it ties back to what Margaret is saying now, that whole anti-intellectualism thing, is that he just looked at me and he said, no, that wouldn't work. So I'm looking to him for him to tell me, well, why wouldn't something like that work? And that was it. Boy, that wouldn't work in the Caribbean, boy, that wouldn't work. And that was it. So I said, okay, well, maybe it's a Grenada thing, So I have a friend, I'm not going to call the country, former attorney general in another OECS country. And I reached out to him and I said, and he's somebody who I have high regards for. And his response was the exact same thing. And I was like, I left, that I said, I concluded, listen, we have a problem. Because none of them had anything to it or chose, and these are people I speak to on issues. They didn't want to engage on the issue. They didn't see any merit in it. They didn't have anything, just that it wouldn't work, but they couldn't say why something like that would work. And I think that would free up the whole question of innovation in the system and creativity. And we know innovation lowers costs, and done rightly, it brings additional benefits to the people who needs it the most.
Exactly. Because
I think the problem is too, but is that where you don't have that level of political maturity among our people in the Caribbean to accept what you're saying. I mean, so theoretically, it makes sense. In practice, it's never going to work. Just because we're just not there. We're not at that level of maturity. I don't know if or when we will ever get there.
Yeah, but
Toro, how when you look at the back, go ahead, Pastor Margaret, go ahead, and after I'll come.
Daphne was going to say something.
Oh yeah, I was just trying to put this together. So, developmental if something happens to the person in a key role, God forbid, who is going to take, who can just slide in that position and be ready? Why are some things on pedestals without having any backing to hold the pedestal up?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I've never heard.
That's a common problem in the Caribbean, a common problem in the Caribbean.
But they gotta get away.
Yeah, I would also hasten to add though that I think that if we want the kind of change that we're talking about, that change is not going to come from the top.
Yeah.
And as with most often, real change starts at the bottom. So it's really going to come from, it really will have to come from your individual communities and villages and people who are
Elections.
really affected by this thing and come up with their own solutions that work for them.
I think elections.
And then sometimes those things, those ideas grow and they blossom and they bloom and they create change. But I think if we're looking to see that kind of change coming from the top in the Caribbean, I don't think that's going to happen.
Therefore, the strategy has to change.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's more than just strategy. To be honest,
it's a mindset.
A mindset, and we are hamstringed by our constitutions, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's not indigenous to us. It was not meant to work for us, and it wasn't meant to work in 2022 plus going forward, right?
Absolutely.
Our hands are really tied, right? And so we could do piecemeal change and all that kind of stuff. Our hands, because the Constitution is really the guide that guides how you govern. So whether you put PNM, UNC, NDC, or NNP, you're going to put a lot of the same things, right? Because so fundamentally, the Constitution tie our hands in terms of what we can do. And I also believe, secondarily, that as Margaret was saying, a lot of the things won't happen inside because in the Caribbean, the societies are fairly small. And people often don't see the big picture. And often people get tied down in the tribalism and that kind of stuff. So we could discuss here tonight and criticize both the NDC and NNP, UNC, PNM, JLP, and PNP. It's very hard for you to go any country in the Caribbean to find people doing that. You get in a discussion and hardcore on one side and hardcore defender party on the other side. So I think a lot of us outside, I think we need to bring, and it may not happen because we have family, we have jobs out here. We need to go back home and try to bring that kind of maturity. Because a lot of the things we're dealing with, you have to put aside parties and politics. So for instance, the pension issue in Grenada. So NMP is in office now. So people will celebrate. If Deacon Mitchell come tomorrow, he's facing the same problem. He had to find $1 billion how much money to pay. So there's not a parties on this, right? So everybody.
I'm glad you say that. I'm glad you say that, Toro.
Because everybody in Grenada needs to sit down to find out how we're going to pay that money, for example. So what I'm saying is, just to make my point before Margaret comes in, I think those of us outside who have that level of maturity, maybe training, and to go back home and try to bring what Margaret is saying, build something from the bottom of the chain. And I don't know if it was by plan or accident that the People's Revolutionary Government brought a lot of people from outside. And perhaps that's why they were able to make so much progress. Because if they had tried to use all the talent inside the Grenada, maybe it wouldn't have been enough. Or there wouldn't have been the drive to do it. Bishop and them want to build airport, airport. I mean, man would have said, no, boy, that's too much work and all that kind of stuff. So you have to bring in the Cubans to lead the way. You have to bring in the Jamaicans to help us lead the way. So again, my point is, we need maybe to bring in a lot of the resources from outside to kind of bring that thing together. Because leaving it up to people back home, they're too caught up in the tribalism, to put it bluntly, and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of narrow, they don't see the bigger picture.
So, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you my personal experience with that. I spent almost 3 years in Grenada because I was so distraught after Trump won. I said, I can't live in America, so I did I'm bleeding.
You took refuge in Grenada.
Yes, I went to Grenada.
Now we know.
Now we know.
I didn't have a plan. I just stayed, and then I realized there's some opportunities here. I tried, and it didn't succeed. But my plan was, just to come back to the US for my annual medical checkup. Anyway, I was craving discussions and stuff like that, and I couldn't find it anyway. And I mean, I was well connected with the sort of intellectual community in Grenada, but when I go around, the conversation is what I avoid in the US. You know?
Yeah, everybody's firm in a position. Everybody's firm in a position.
Yes, so I started to host these dinner parties, okay, at a friend's house in Batway. And we'd invite 15, 20, sometimes a little more came up. And I generally invited people from all walks of life because I had friends on both sides. And I remember this young lady, after the first one, I don't know who had invited her. I didn't, but somebody told her about it and she came. She was a young political activist. And she came up to me and she didn't know me, but she knew my brother. And she said, "Oh my God, I have never been to something like this." She said, "So when you're going to do another one, please take my name and call me." She said, "I learned so much." She said, "I didn't know that's how this thing's supposed to be. I thought I was just supposed to, like, if somebody on NNP hate them." And she said, "I see you have NNP people here, and I see you have NDC and some people who are not political." And this was what, I don't know, 24, 25-year-old young lady. And being a political activist, she said, since she was about 15, and had never been actually in a room, sit down, laugh, eat some food, drink, have real detailed conversation about big issues, and not anybody cursing anybody out. And I found that. And I'm on my way to Grenada, and I actually is organizing a forum with, I don't know if you know this woman. Her name is Eugenia O'Neill. She's a writer and author also in Grenada, researching a book on the Rastafarian movement. And obviously, if you're seriously going to write about the Rastafarian movement in Grenada, you have to, it's going to tie in somehow with the revolution. At some juncture, there's an intersection there. So I have organized a forum for us to sit down and meet some Rastafarians, some musicians coming out of them days. And again, from here, I'm inviting folks that I know who are NNP. They're my friends. They're my friends. You know, and some folks who are NBC and some other people who are non-political and so forth for the conversation. And I sent out the invite to about, I don't know, about 25 or 30 people so far. And some of them were people who I did those dinners with, and then a few people who didn't. And I got the same response because I made a mistake in the little flyer I sent out that I didn't put the date. So they said, "Come on, Beaver, when is this thing coming on? I really want to be part of it." And even if I suggested, because we didn't have a big venue, that, you know, you could only bring one person, I got like about 100 messages in the last couple of days. People saying, so there's a need for it, or people want it. So that vacuum in leadership is something that, and if we don't find a way to solve that, we're going to lose another generation of people who could probably contribute meaningfully to our economy, to education, to healthcare, and they're just going to, it's not going to happen. I wanted to tie back into sort of a little bit more in the topic, Toro and Margaret, and everybody could chime in on this. The Biden administration seemed to have no, American administrations, certainly since Reagan and probably actually from Carter, every administration that comes to power always have a kind of one or two stars in the administration, right? Because American politics has become greatly tied in to celebrity politics also. So you will have people in the administration who are stars. And Obama was very good at it. He brought in big name, high-powered people because I think he was comfortable and had that kind of confidence in himself. The Biden administration doesn't seem to have that. You know, I'm a political junkie, and when he named his cabinet, I didn't get anyone right. I didn't get anyone right. Generally, I'm able to pick 7 or 8 or 9 sometime who I think is going to. Every single one of my predictions, none of them made the cabinet. So if you look at the cabinet now, the only sort of really brand name person is the Treasury Secretary, but she keeps a low profile, very good at her job. I think it was an excellent choice. I probably would have picked somebody else, but she's an excellent choice. And then the Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, who has kind of come up and sort of is making a name for himself. But before that, he was a small town mayor, a small town mayor. We do like he was running this big show. He was running, basically running the equivalent of Chantemelle in Grenada. So
hey, how do you small towns? I wouldn't have you, okay? I lived in a small town here, right? And it was great.
No,
so don't go there.
Come on, that was a small town mayor. And listen, I like the guy. I like him. I think he's a serious policy wonk. I think he understands the issues. He obviously is going to have some challenges convincing certain people in the country, but he's definitely part of the future of the Democratic Party. It appears that he's very competent too, or that he's smart enough to have brought in people on his staff who really knows what they're doing. So how do you think the absence of those kind of stars, those kind of, so for lack of a better term, brand name politicians, because the defense secretary, I had never heard of him before, Homeland Security, I knew who the Attorney General was because, well, I kind of followed his career for a while. How does that have affected the Biden administration? Because even if they have done good things, a few good things, they seem still to be struggling to get their sea legs. Do you think that has affected him? And why do you think Biden went for that kind of more dull policy wonks than the brand name secretaries that he could have tapped to run the different departments?
I think part of the problem is that Biden has never been a great messenger. The message of a country and a government often is driven a lot by how articulate, how believable is the messenger, the leader.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to give the Grenada Revolution a lot of credit, Morris a lot of credit for the revolution. So that by 1983, people were saying, no, Morris, no revolution, right?
Exactly.
When Clinton was there, with all the thing Clinton was doing, interfering with all them little girls, he was a good messenger. But people are willing to a little break, that kind of, Obama was a good messenger also. So I think Biden's problem, again, he made some good picks in terms of talent, in terms of diversity, but Biden himself is not, I mean, again, even with Trump, you might dislike Trump as much as you want. He was a good marketer and messenger in that sense. So even though he was doing nonsense, he had his own supporters rally. So I think part of the real problem is, but I agree with you, Biden should be getting a lot more credit, a lot of things they did. But I think the problem to me, as far as I see it, is him as a messenger. If the leader is not really a good messenger, a lot of things they're lost, in the thing. And I think that's what's happening with him.
Yeah, but he probably needs a good publicist, good and a speech writer, people to train him, this is how you make your delivery.
You think you can train him?
I don't think that's going to change anything.
No, Biden said something else, man. You can't train.
No, but you know what? He talks as though, he's talking to you across the fence,
Right, hey, and that is where his strength is.
This is how he comes on.
But
Margaret.
That's good for a senator and campaigning, but when you become
exactly,
and that is what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. That's where his strength is, and that's good for the backroom deals when you need to get bills and stuff passed.
Exactly,
that's where that is. But you're quite right. I mean, in terms of delivery on the public stage, no, he's not. He's really not there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at him and say.
So I understand why he could not say at the very outset that he's not going to run for a second term, right? I understand why, because that would have crippled his presidency immediately.
Right. He would have lamed up immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. But,
it's so true.
But why hasn't he, and it's entirely up to the president, made a better effort to help his VP become to better prepare just in case, because he has really done a terrible job there.
I mean, I suppose he has, but I mean, you can't put it if it's in there either. And that's all I'm going to say.
We're gonna. That's some fighting words. That's my girl. That's my girl.
Margaret, you touched that with a 10-foot pole. I ain't touching that one. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I said what I said. You can't put the dividend there. And I
was she better suited for another position?
Watch me. I'll be talking like this to you all. There's no identity. I have an identity crisis right now.
But do you think she was better? I know. Listen, I picked her to be VP, and I remember me and Ken had a series of ongoing conversations.
Well, I thought
I picked her just about after she announced. I said she's not going to make it, but she's going to be the VP candidate for whoever it is.
No, I never liked
she does.
Yeah.
We lost your audio.
Hearing you. Where's your audio?
Daphne, we lost you.
We lost your audio.
What happened to your audio?
It's okay. She's gonna come back up.
In a second. I never.
Just wait, so she can talk until.
Okay. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. Thanks.
No, because you have to come out on the stage, and you come out and you say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," and you say with so much power, and you know you're confident. There's no confidence. They come out as though they're coming out of the backyard from sitting by the pool and good morning, and they drag their feet. You know, so I was looking at them. No, they have no diplomatic protocols. None was etiquette.
But that's my point. Why hasn't he done more to enhance and make a?
But Delbert, you still miss the point.
Listen, one of the challenges you have.
Cannot put it if it's not there.
I think
you know what the problem is? The problem is they saw her performance in the Senate when they had the investigation and whatnot, and everybody bought into that and figured that was what it is. Now, down the road, might she have become a better VP? Sure, but I do not think that she was in that space at that point in time. She was not, and you cannot look at one performance, and you need to understand that when this person gets there, they literally, if he pops tomorrow, she becomes the president of the United States. And the reality is, she was not there. But of course, you're pandering to a group of people rather than looking at the practicality of whether or not this person is capable. And you put her there. And there's been talks about, and there's been a lot of stuff written about this. But I never did think that she was ready for that role. And I still don't think so. Not at all.
Yeah.
And that's the problem when you look at simply star power. Somebody get up on one investigation, and a few media spots because somebody edits something a certain way, so it projects you a certain way. It doesn't make you a VP candidate. It just doesn't.
Would she have been a better candidate for Attorney General?
Yeah.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a good prosecutor. I was telling you guys, before the Black Lives Matter thing happened, I was convinced that Biden was going to pick Sleepy Amy. He was going to play it safe and pick a woman, and Sleepy Amy, the one from Minnesota, she was going to be the VP. She's a good policy. Right, and she was safe. She was safe. He was going to pick Sleepy Amy. But because Black Lives Matter happened, he had to pick.
Exactly.
But Kamran, one of the things that concerned me was that she didn't have a strong base among African Americans born in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She didn't have a strong base there. We Black West Indian people liked her for some reason. Well, she has a Jamaican father and all that.
And the Southeast Asians,
Right. So we liked her.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like Hillary. I keep telling guys, there's no way in hell Hillary is going to be elected. Hillary, if the rest of the world was electing a president for the United States, Hillary would get elected 10 times over. But when you look at the politics in the United States, I know guys who voted Republicans, Democrats, from the time they left the Caribbean and they went to the States. Them guys were telling me there is no way they voted for Hillary, right? Yeah. One night I was watching TV, I see a guy came out, he said, the name of the group was Blacks for Crazy Bunny. So the interviewer said, So if Bonnie doesn't get it, you guys wouldn't vote for Hillary? The guy said, no way in hell. We voted for Bonnie. If Bonnie is, when I saw that, I know Hillary wasn't going to.
Look, let me tell you
in my view, Hillary was never leading in the election. Whether they did what they did with the releasing the thing on her. Hillary is hated by both Republican, Democrat, and Independent. She doesn't have enough support to get elected as president.
I agree. I agree. I was saying I agree with Toro for the same reason. As a Caribbean person, I mean, I couldn't vote for anything named Clinton. I'm sorry. And I think my beef goes back. I always remember that banana issue.
Exactly.
That sticks in my craw up to this day. And the mere fact.
But Margaret, was the banana issue was going to happen? Whoever was
it doesn't
president.
matter. I don't care. I'm from the Caribbean and I'm loyal. You know, let me tell you something. I tell you one thing, Delbert. When I'm in the Caribbean, I'll wage war against my neighbors. But you see, when I'm here, I don't wage war against my neighbors. You understand? So you attack one, you attack all. That's my policy when I'm here. All right. But you know that, you know, but so that was one of my issues. The other thing is I always remember, I mean, there were other issues why I've never been on the Clinton bandwagon. And I think part of the reason it's sort of like started because I was in Missouri when Bill ran the first time around. And so I encountered a lot of students from Arkansas. And I can tell you, he was not popular.
Yep.
I mean, when you hear their conversations about Bill Clinton and stuff, you kind of like go like, and I'm thinking, well, if you're from the state where he is governor and this is your thinking, what is there that I don't know about this guy? And we see exactly who Slick Willie was.
But he was governor 4 terms there. So how is that possible?
Yeah, well, you know how that goes. You could never explain. Probably they had nothing better to choose. But, you know, so there was that. And I think, you know, over the years, just looking at them and their policies toward Black people. I mean, living here in Brooklyn, I remember several hospitals here needed to be saved. St. Mary's, when St. Mary's closed, I mean, people literally went to that woman as senator of this state to ask her to help save that hospital. And she did absolutely nothing. And these are the same people who would go there and vote for her. I also remember too, when she and Obama was running for the Democratic candidacy, and when Obama got it, you had a bunch of women, right, who were her supporters, who literally said that they were not going to vote for Obama at all. They were so mad that he got the nomination that she didn't get it, that they literally went out and formed their own PAC, you know, to support that was against Obama. And yet these same people wanted to come back to me for my vote for Hillary Clinton. You got to be crazy. You'll be out of your mind. I'm tired and sick of people taking me for granted. That's the reason why, you know, every Black person people see in this country, they automatically assume that they're Democratic. And I made sure, no, I am not affiliated with any party here. But you got to work for my vote. So don't assume that simply because you're wearing a donkey ears that I'm going to vote for you. No.
Okay, but we have a bigger problem because Biden is pushing 80 years old, and the presidency, as we know, takes a toll mentally, physically.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
So the fact that I don't know that they're not thinking it. I know it has to be on his mind. He also has to be interested in whatever legacy he might be able to put together, whether he becomes a consequential president or not. And often, especially in his case, that would be determined, or that agenda would have to be carried out by your VP. So the fact that they have not given her the kind of assignments that would give her some increase in gravitas, it remains troubling.
Yeah, it's been interesting. The dynamic of the working relationship is kind of weird, right? So, and I think it's also both on the president's side and the vice president, because those vice presidents who have been high profile, I think they also did things to lift the profile while they were vice president. I'm not sure how much she's doing. Maybe she's feeling constrained by being a woman, woman of color and all that. So she could be constrained by all that. So, but there's something happening. I mean, we know there's something happening. Exactly what? We can't put our finger on it, but something is not normal between the president and the vice president. We don't know exactly what to think.
Yeah, you know
it's
what?
Not the normal run of
the
things.
other thing, I think Toro is hitting on something there too. I mean, even so, let's put aside all my little idiosyncrasies and just look at it. For me, just looking at it objectively, I don't feel confident. I mean, just looking at her, I don't have the confidence in her. Now, regardless of how I feel about Hillary, right? Put her to stand up beside Hillary. I could see Hillary going outside there on the battlefield and say, oh, no, she may not be able to do it in reality. But, the confidence is there. It seems to me that she has a better grasp of the issues, both on the world stage and here, that I'm not convinced that Kamala does. No, I'm not saying that she doesn't. It's just that she doesn't project it to me to make me feel confident that she can handle it.
That's true.
So two weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the prospect for some kind of nuclear engagement went up. It has sort of been lowered certainly this week, and hopefully as we move forward. Do you think that as part of Biden's reaction, because Clinton was a master at that, where he had that sort of what he called his kitchen cabinet. There was a group of policy wonks and experts outside of the government who he met with regularly all the time, to discuss issues and get a feel. Because sometimes when you're in the trenches fighting the battle on the day-to-day, you don't always have the clearest or the best picture. There's no evidence that Biden has sort of convened a group of experts outside of the government that he regularly consults with, if we had to go in that direction. And I've often asked the question, he has in his administration, whether you agree with her or not, one of the most serious foreign policy thinkers of our time, Susan Rice. How she ended up as domestic policy advisor remains unexplainable. What is happening to her? And that in many ways shows the weakness of his administration, that he was not willing to fight for this woman. Maybe she should have been back as national security advisor. I understand the problems with would have having her been confirmed, but she was never even considered for to be Secretary of State in this administration. His failure to have this kind of and I hate using the word because I don't think she would like that, a celebrity politician, but she's certainly well respected across. The thing is, right, the problems that the Republicans have with her are so minute, but in terms of her policies and our general foreign policy outlook, it closely aligned with Republican dogma, but yet still they would oppose her based on some silly thing. How is he doing that? What has he done? Is there any evidence that he has sort of had that group of outside advisors that he's relying on to give him a broader? Because there was a poll today that I read that showed that Americans, for whatever reason, and there's no evidence to support it, that 55% of Americans felt that the new German chancellor was doing better than Biden. 53% thought the French president was doing better than Biden. And there was a third European leader who also scored over 50. Biden was at 48% in terms of his leadership on the war. And I couldn't understand where this poll was coming from, because Germany has kind of just been doing their best middle of the road dance,
But Macron has been stepping up,
Macron,
yeah.
but
You have to
but
remember,
he has not had anything to show for
Macron
it.
have an election.
Yeah.
Macron has an election coming soon.
Up.
You understand?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about Paul also is that I was watching CNN today, and they said a majority of Russians are now backing Putin and the war because they feel that some of the West is out to get Russia and bring Russia down, which is another unexpected outcome of this whole thing. In the beginning, well, if you listen to Western press, Russians were against the war and all that. But the latest polling done by
Toro, if you close off all other sources of information and you're only feeding people one set of information, what do you expect?
Right. What I'm saying. So we know that. What I'm saying is, when the West is admitting that a majority of people inside Russia are now supporting Putin, well, something is going on there. So that's another unexpected outcome of that thing. Just going back to Biden, anybody believe that Biden, as a politician generally, he has been in politics for many years, so many decades. Is he performing under par, above, equal? I mean, Biden has never impressed me as a politician. Biden just happened to be in the right place at the right time when there was a very unpopular Trump, and was anybody except Trump.
Yeah, anybody
I mean, what Biden is doing now, to me, is what everybody should have expected of him as a politician.
Yeah.
Biden has been mediocre as a politician all his life and making gaffes all over the place. So I don't know why some people are surprised.
You're right. He hasn't changed his way. He hasn't improved. Did you all see the when they were presenting the lynching bill a couple of days ago in the gardens? And the way he came, oh my, he came out as though, he says, oh ma, it's as though you and I live together in Margaret next door. Margaret, and you call it Margaret, and then finally you come out. I said, guess what? Let's talk about the lynching bill that they're planning to put out. He just came out. She just stood there like a pole. Everybody's sitting down in the garden, and I'm like, what is wrong with these people? They need help.
So nothing unites the U.S.
No,
Congress,
because listen, the VP is standing next to him. He's there. There's this other woman there talking about this lynching bill. They just passed it, and it took 122 years. Something like that is so, paramount that you'll come up with some sort of public image on it. There was no excitement. It was as though I was saying, Margaret Gale, I just found some tomatoes in my garden. How many do you want?
Exactly.
One of the things
I could not get over it. My grandfather was a politician, and when he stood up, people paid attention. You understand? I was a little girl, so to see President Biden now, see him walking out as though he was walking out in his bedroom slippers to the podium. I'm like, what is this going on?
So
you know what? I'm going to send some energy pills for him.
one of the things that Republicans are masters at is pinning or tagging controversial legislation to must-pass bills.
Yes.
So now you have nothing unites the U.S. Congress as war, and everybody's united and they can get it done in record time. Sometimes by voice votes to that extent. Why hasn't the Democrats, who have historically been bad at that, tagged to these massive military spending bills for Ukraine and for Europe, tag some of the must-pass legislation onto these bills and force Republicans to vote no? Why haven't they been able to do that? Only last night, I think the Biden administration got Congress to approve another $3 billion in I don't know how much emergency funding now for Ukraine. Another $3 billion yesterday to help procure more weaponry to them. Why? For example, we have the voter bills there. We have the election bills. We have all these other legislation that were being spoken about 6-7 months ago that they were not able to think. Why haven't they been able to tag some of this legislation to these must spending bills? Because the Republicans will be forced to vote up or down on them and get them passed. What is stopping them from doing it?
It's
Because
the emails.
Has the Republican
It's the
been
emails.
empowered? That the Republican been empowered, that's exactly what they will be doing.
Exactly.
Listen, Margaret, you know, they could sit behind the scenes because you've worked for all these big companies. I know what I'm talking about, and you know what I'm talking about. If I send an email to you,
we lost your audio again.
Unmute text.
Once she go down, you have to wait and let her keep talking so she can come back up.
Okay.
It's called Canada and Bell Canada.
Yeah, listen, Belle and I'm going to have a lawsuit with them. Yeah, no, they messed me up since 3 weeks now, since they came into my home. Yeah, you know, it's the emails, because if they send an email to you to vote and you don't see that email until a week later, you know, there's nobody in the administration who's going to call and ask you, oh, Margaret, you didn't vote on that legislation. What happened? Oh, you know, I didn't see. Well, it's too late. It's too late now. So we have to do it over again. Hello, Jesus.
Margaret, what grade are you giving your new mayor? He seems to be all over the map.
Are you? At this point, it's a you.
I'm no longer a New Yorker, so I don't have any dog in that fight anymore. You know? But what's happening? What's happening in New York City? I mean, I have not seen that. I have not seen that level of chaos since the last Koch administration.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, so he came in and there's been like this whole focus on crime because you've had an uptick, convenient uptick, in my opinion. The 5%, because, you know, I always say I reserve 5% of my brain for conspiracy theories. So the 5% of my brain is operating now about this sudden crime uptick once you had a Black Lives Movement started thing, and then all of a sudden the summer after, you just suddenly had all of these mysterious shootings happening and all of these guns, which they had under control all the time before. You know, so he's coming and, you know, he's not going to tolerate any crime. You know, he's brought back, you know, he has this new street crime unit now, which he said that they'll be identifiable. I think they're going to be wearing a different type of uniform that would make them identifiable and stuff. So he's brought that back. And then, of course, you had all these incidents on the subway with people being pushed. So what he has done is that he has sort of increased patrols down there as well. And he's also passed this policy that they got to get the homeless off the trains. So at the end of every line now, you got to like just get them off, right? So there's that. And then he also wants to clear up the streets of the homeless as well. So he's been, you know, they tend to set up encampments under bridges and stuff and whatever. So you have a few of those around. So they've been like rounding them up and clearing them off. So there's that. And of course, you know, the battle has begun between the people who are saying, no, you can't do this, you know, that is wrong, and those who are saying something else. So there's that battle going on. Then so New York had this policy with COVID where, you know, the whole vaccination thing, which was the reason why, who was it, Kyrie Irving or whoever it was, that player wasn't able to play in New York City because he was well, we don't know. He didn't disclose what his status was, basically. I don't think he ever said what his status was. Anyhow, there was some story with that. So he couldn't play in New York. And so last week, was it? Yeah. Or the week before. Anyhow, he announced, you know, he lifted the exemption. So of course that created a whole big sting, because what people are saying, you can't have one policy for one person and a different policy for other people. Yeah. And so the thing is, they're saying that it's now understood that the Nets, you know, well, the teams and everybody else and all these big wealthy people have been lobbying him heavily to get that sort of like removed and stuff and whatever. So that, of course, has created another furor among people here who are not very happy about that. So you're right. He's kind of like all over the place, and and then what he, and I mean, he does have a point on a certain level that everybody who's complaining about crime, about the treatment of the fact that he's bringing back such a heavy police presence, he's concerned about victims' rights. It's not simply what the person who commits the crime, is not simply them who have rights, but what about the victim as well? They also have rights too. So why are we?
This is a guy who is a product of the 1970s New York City Police Department. Why should we expect anything different?
Well, which is what some people have said. That's basically what it is, and so that's kind of like So that there goes or Mayor.
I mean, some of the very attempted controversial appointments that he sought to make, that one of the things, politics 101 or governing 101, is that you try to get a running start, and he seemed to have
there's some things I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with this, because I'm sure your parents must have said this to you growing up home, never trouble till trouble you. But he seems to be just trouble, boy. His parents obviously didn't tell him that. That's probably not a part of the American context, whatever, because I mean, you're right. He has appointed people, or make some appointments that just had some people going crazy, stir up a whole set of controversies again. That's correct. He appointed this guy from the Bronx. So what was it? I can't remember what it was, but who has a strong anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ position. Then there was the appointment of his brother as his chief security. That also raised eyebrows and had people making noise about it as well. So he seemed to like, he seemed to like trouble in trouble.
And then what do you think about his call for businesses to move away from the work at home phenomenon that has become? Because I have a family member who works for the largest doctor group in the tri-state area, and they were just at the break of the pandemic, had leased almost 1 million square foot in the Secaucus, New Jersey area, and canceled the lease, and everybody's working out of home. Everybody was going to occupy that 1 million square foot of administration and what have you is working out of home. And the company has decided, that's it. We're never going back into the office. They have seen their productivity go up and their costs go way, way, way down. As we know, rent in the tri-state area is big thing. You think he's going to be successful at that? How is that going?
I don't know, because there seem to be a lot of people who want to work at home. So there's some pushback on that. I mean, on that one, something I honestly don't. I agree with him on that to a certain extent, because I tell you, I'm located downtown, right? Fidei, in Financial District, just a couple of blocks up from Wall Street, and I mean, you've lived in the city, Delbert, so I think you have a fair idea of how that area used to be bustling in recent times. I mean, before the pandemic, when I step outside, I mean, you're literally fighting with people in the lunch hour to walk
on the crosswalk,
right? And between people on you walk down to the stock exchange and it's bustling down there, that kind of stuff. And I can tell you that when COVID hit, that place was like a ghost town.
Yeah.
Right. And granted that some life has returned, a lot of life pre the pandemic has not returned. And in that area, it's a lot of small businesses, as you know. There are a lot of, particularly, let's look at the restaurants and stuff. You don't really, I mean, yeah, there's McDonald's and stuff around, but then you have a lot of these hole in the wall types of small businesses and stuff. And a lot of them have had to close, right? Because there's just no customers.
Yeah.
Right? And even now that we're back, people like, well, you know, you had all the limitations on eating in, but even though that has been eased, a lot of people are sitting at work. And I mean, I do that too. Sit at work, place my order, walk in, pick it up, walk right back out. So you walk inside and the places look really dead in any event, you know? So, and that means there's a whole set of people that are not employed either, because again, you understand retail and how you put people on staff and whatnot and everything else. If you don't have a whole set of people that you're not going to have. So if everybody was to start, or the majority of people work from home, just think about, you know, the ripple effects downstream of all the other people who are affected by all these people who are not coming back to office spaces. Is cleaners who would normally come in the evening and do the night shifts and stuff. Those people, they won't have jobs because there's nobody in these office spaces for them to come in to clean. So, you know, it's not as simple as, well, you know, I don't want to go back to work. I want to work from home now. Think about, you know, so it's sort of, it's a difficult thing to sit down and say, well, yes, I agree with him 100% or whatever. It's one of these things where it's so nuanced. There's just so many gray areas, you know, that you can't simply say, well, it's this or that.
Tora and Daphne, are you seeing similar outcomes in the Greater Toronto area?
Yes, we have a lot of empty executive buildings. And also what happened, we had a legislation bill that we put through. We did a LTC, which is a long-term care bill, and also the work at home bill. So you have the option now to either work at home or going to the office 1 day a week, 2 days a week, or you do it by virtually. So there are options right now, but when you look around, oh my gosh, the real estate is just, and you know, a lot of foreigners are lapping up our real estate right now, simply because it's just sitting there, you know, and especially in key places, you know, it's pretty sad, you know, but what can I say? It's the times we live in.
Do you think he's going to have to? Go ahead, Tora.
In Ontario, there is a provincial election on June the 2nd, right? So it is in the interest of the government to reopen. So they have reopened because it's a conservative government and they depend on business support mostly. And the guys who are protesting in Ottawa and blocked this thing for a whole month, these are the kind of people that support them, who are against the vaccination and all that. They have opened up, basically drop all mandates. But what is happening now is all the health experts are saying that we are into the sixth wave of the pandemic. There's a lot of hospitalization. People are not dying as in the early days of the pandemic because of the vaccine and all that. But there are a lot of hospitalization taking place. People are getting the COVID still. And the health experts are saying we're in the sixth wave of this pandemic. So, the government is saying, well, we have things in place to deal with the sick and all that. But the reopening isn't going as planned, but we'll see how that pans out. If nobody dies, they're okay.
Do you think these big city mayors, they're going to have, often a big city mayor has a bully pulpit, especially places like New York. But do you think they're going to have to do more in terms of roll out some kind of incentive packages that would give these businesses the incentive to return to the workplace? Because businesses, private businesses, are all about the bottom line, and if they're seeing stay at home to be profitable for them, and especially if you see have increased productivity. But haven't we lost when you work at home in those sort of individual spaces? And I know, listen, things have changed because we can share screens and we can do all these things, but not being in that sort of pit or or in a conference room, that regular meeting, haven't we lost some creativity by walking away from that?
Of course.
Definitely. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's all well and good. Yeah, you could collaborate to a certain extent, working from home. But I think there's something about a personal touch that is still necessary to you working in the office. I mean, sometimes you may be working on something and it's so much easier to just walk over to another person's space, see the person face to face and bounce that idea off, as opposed to, you're on a screen, there's something between you, that barrier there. So I think that personal interaction is still necessary. And not just that, but just for the psyche. Human beings are not meant to be alone. We are social animals.
Absolutely.
That's and once you're behind the screen, it places a barrier between that social interaction. So I think that is necessary.
That's true. I agree. I totally agree. One of the things that we did in Ontario has done in incentives, as Lincoln would agree with, the mayor of Toronto, he took away the stickers, so you don't have to buy a sticker for your vehicle anymore. So, but he's running for political office come up soon. So basically, they're putting certain incentives in place, but at the same time, the masses don't realize it's bait. They're being baited in that sense, And like Margaret, you were saying, that personal touch is missing, and I think herd immunity for the pandemic, it may work, it may not work, but at some point in time, they should go back to the fact that we have to meet and mingle. That is our nature, and that's how we live best.
Yeah.
And that will be fundamentally, that will be a business decision in the end. If businesses find it's more profitable for you to work at home, they're going to insist on you working from home. I mean, we are, as workers, we'll have little choice in the matter. If they realize it's more profitable to have us come back, they'll have us come back. Everything is the bottom line. So once they do the analysis and they do everything, they will have the final decision as to how this thing goes.
I wanted to touch back a little on the whole question of the inflation and supply chain issues. And there's a new school of thought on it being advanced by this guy from Moody's Economics. His name eludes me now. He's a chief economist. And actually, they both have the name elude me right now. What's his name out of NYU, who is a professor of marketing and finance. And they are suggesting that the inflation and the supply chain issues are as a result of so much liquidity in the market, because with 2.5 years of pandemic, the US pumped almost $7 trillion into the economy. And that gave a lot of people a lot of more buying power. And that he suggested that people were buying because there was so much liquidity, and a lot of people who did not have disposable income, who all of a sudden found themselves with $5,000-$6,000 more, were buying just for buying sake. They were buying things that they didn't need. So while there was no need to stock up on 20 cases of water and put it in your basement, people were buying that, or buying 10 bales of toilet paper. And that in its sense was contributing more to the supply chain than actually. And he went to further suggest that because mainstream media kept talking about it, it actually made the problem worse. What do you think?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It did.
I agree with that.
It actually did, I remember going to Costco, and the lineup was from Costco's front door back to Costco's front door, right around the building. I'm like, are they crazy? Buy Lysol. They were buying Lysol and toilet paper and paper towels. What else they were buying? And the water. And what else? Every time you go on the shelves, it's empty. you know.
Yeah.
How much toilet paper are you going to use this month? You
Yeah.
know, now what we find that people are selling somebody, even the PPEs that they give in hospitals, a lot of people will buying them from other places, and now they're trying to sell them. So now they just pass a criminal law. If you're found with it, you're criminally justified. You know. So this is the problem with post pandemic, all the issues that are stepping up, you know. But I read today that the shelves in America are becoming empty. And I'm sure the shelves in Canada, because guess what? My children shop for me most of the times. You know, I go up few and far between, you know, so they didn't want me out there. So
But at first I could not understand it because my regular supermarket that I go to, I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't find any problem. So I kept asking myself, where's the supply chain that they were talking about? But also some businesses has used that supply chain just around the Christmas time.
To raise prices.
I was
yes.
I went to purchase. This is a poultry supplier, poultry and provision supplier in Newark, New Jersey, who I have used for the past 15 years. They have probably some of the best prices on the cured salted hams. And I had a few friends in Canada who I always send up to. And this thing comes from North Carolina and Virginia. Yeah. All right. And this guy has kept his price for 10 years. And this year he raised it 40%. Wow. And actually at the beginning of the season, I purchased a few and whoever I had to send it out. And then I went back, I think about 2 weeks before Christmas and it was 40%. The price was 40%. And I asked, you know, what is the supply chain issue from Virginia to New Jersey? Please explain it to me. Because as soon as I asked, he said, supply chain. I said, what, the trucks are not running anymore? What's happening, you know? And he of course, he didn't want to explain it. He didn't want to engage. And so because we live in a system where you don't have regular price control agents going around,
that's right.
This thing is going to terribly affect brown and black communities, you know.
Well, you know, it's funny that you say that too, because I was listening to a story some time ago on NPR, and the people were explaining that even the prices that they're charging on gas, there was no need to charge that because that gas and oil and whatever is stuff that they had purchased years before.
Yes, on the futures market, yeah.
Exactly. And they paid that money for it.
Yes.
So, but now they just raise the prices on these things, but that's not the price.
Yeah. And there's talk that the airlines might be, I think one of them have tried it already, floated it, but it didn't sit well and they pulled back, that they may go back to a fuel surcharge on tickets. Now, two airlines, historically, Southwest and JetBlue has been really, really, really good in terms of, because airline fuel cost is the largest cost, okay, even over equipment. So these are two airlines have been really strategic over the years in terms of buying oil in the futures market to keep their costs down. The industry, I don't know, it's something that I found troubling for many, many years, because as a kid, when I first started traveling to visit family in Trinidad, it was smaller planes, and I remember I was allowed 2 bags of 72 pounds or something like that. All right, the equipment, the planes are bigger now. They're more efficient, but we are told, and us as humans, right? We are also bigger, hopefully stronger. I don't know about that, but we have more equipment to help them get items in and out of the cargo bay of a plane. But we're told now we can't have a 70-pound bag. Yeah. And I was in London in December and bought a ticket, and I was fortunate. I was only traveling there for about 5 days, so I needed very little. But how would the airlines expect you to travel to Europe or any one of the major destination and actually not have a suitcase with stuff that you are going to need? And the price, Delta was charging me $125 for my bag. You know, and I don't know why the sort of traveling public has accepted it. We seem to have just resigned to the fact that and it turns out that last year, I think combined, well, not last year, the last full year of business, 2019, the combined profit from the airline industry was about $9 billion, and about 60% of it was from baggage. So they have just thrown efficiency and all these things out the window. They don't care about that anymore because they know they're going to gouge us on the baggage fees, and that we really don't have a choice. And I'm wondering, why hasn't even a public who is supposedly more sophisticated, more interconnected, why haven't we pushed back against something like that?
That's a good question. And so many other things have been automated. So
yes.
They have less workers, you know. Before time you bought your tickets and somebody had to tear it, everything is automated. And I mean, that's why I don't like airline travel. I mean, every time you're about to travel, you never know what new fee you have to pay. There's always something new.
Yes.
You get to the airport, they tell you something. They get on the airline, it's something new. I mean, airline it's real hassle. I mean, that's a good question, Delbert. I don't know why countries have allowed airlines to get away with murder, just doing anything. It seems like they could do anything and get away with it. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, and now you have the added travel insurance. I mean, you don't have to get it, but you might.
There's always something.
Or they make you believe that you cannot complete that purchase without getting it.
No, but you can. You see, the problem is that you can. You could check no.
I always check no.
Yeah, but every step it pops back up and tell you, there's even one company that told me, are you going to, like, they was always almost accusing me of being stupid if I didn't purchase it, you know? Are you going to risk your entire trip and your family's vacation over 1456 or whatever they were charging me? And I was like, this is insulting, you know? But
you should ask them, who's the pilot? Who's the pilot or the first officer, you know?
But today, once upon a time, I probably would not have done it. Today, I'd recommend it, not simply because of COVID, but certainly because of past experience. I know we had a family friend in Grenada who got sick and actually was having a heart attack. And luckily for him, he had travel insurance now. It was advised that he get out of Grenada and get out of Grenada fast. So they were able to get him, to charter a plane to get him to Miami. He just needed to get to the closest point in the United States. And so they were able to charter a plane and get him on. So it's really not a bad idea to have it if you can. And I mean, even now with my mother going up and down, I'm not letting her go to Grenada without travel insurance.
It is so important. I mean, a couple of years ago, one of my eldest brothers, who had returned from London in 2003 and set up shop and was doing happy in Grenada very well. His wife moved back, became a lecturer at both SGU and National College. And he was home not feeling well, went to see the doctor in St. George's, and they advised him to get out immediately, And it just so happened that on the day Virgin Atlantic was in Grenada, so he did not even return back up. He lived in Montrodney in St. Patrick's. He just went straight to the airport, bought a ticket, called his wife and said he was heading to London, and literally that saved his life. He went straight from the airport to a hospital, and that's another topic. But also this week, leaders of the NDC were visiting in Florida. What I have not seen or heard any assessment or analysis of the trip, whether or not it was successful, what kind of funds they have been able to raise. There seems to be genuine excitement in the opposition camp, but it also seems to be coming from the same 12 people who have always been promoting NDC heavily. What do you think are the prospects for that? And because the Mitchell administration has in the last month or so rolled out a lot of small initiatives, and what I don't see from NDC is an answer to them. Just saying, oh, it's a political gimmick is not enough, because if you have a young lady or a young man who is unemployed and one of these political gimmicks all of a sudden starts to put $1,000 in their hand monthly, for them it's a real job.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Margaret.
No. I was just going to say, I didn't, I really didn't pay much attention to the trip to Miami. The only reason why I did go scan through it today is because a friend of mine had called me, but they called me on a technical issue about it. So that was more, it wasn't a political issue, it was more some technical issue in terms of the, how the look of it. And so I said, okay, I'll look at it. And I kind of like went and I these days, because you could just scan through, I just scanned through to see what the technical issues he was talking about, and then I was gone. So I really didn't pay attention to the substance of it or anything like that. So I can't really comment on that part of it.
Yeah, I first of all, I know they had planned and announced that he was going to make a North American tour, right?
Yeah.
Miami, New York, and Canada. And then they said he's only making one stop. And I said, there has to be a good reason why he's only going to Florida. Because if I'm going to make a North American tour as a leader and I have to make one stop, it got to be New York as a Grenadian. The biggest diaspora outpost of Grenadian is in New York. So I said, maybe there's some big financier or somebody in Florida he's meeting. But that aside, I saw a video that was done of him going into the hotel and nice video kind of stuff, right? I mean, it was nicely done, right? The thing I told the person who sent it to me, I said, these things are good, but I just hope the NDC isn't going to make the same mistake like they did in 2018, mostly, where they tried to adopt an Obama model where they run a heavily focused social media campaign, right? Yeah. A lot of the stuff they did was on social media, and people in Grenada never saw it, right? Yeah. And it's a new age and new media and stuff like that. People in Grenada never saw it, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And this video I saw, I give them credit. It was kind of done like a movie, the guy walking in with his thing, even though he was in a short pants and that kind of stuff. There's little things they might criticize, but it was well done, right? But again, I'm saying how, as a party who's trying to gain power to be the incumbent who has been there, these things, no matter what you do, has to be translated into reaching voters, the majority of voters on the ground in Grenada, in villages, and have them vote for you. The other part of that, I don't listen to every speech, so maybe he has done it, but you get a vibe from him. There was a bump when he came in. Everybody like him. He's young, he's vibrant, he's bright. But at some point, he has to go beyond that to start putting a little meat on the bone. So for instance, he has said things like he'll put up a technical school in every parish and set up agro industries. These things cost money, right, to do.
Not feasible.
Right, and if you come in, you have pension to pay, $1.2 billion to pay. So especially if he gets into a debate, right? Where he's debating somebody like Keith Mitchell. You don't have to like Keith Mitchell to understand the guy, understand what he's doing, you understand politics.
Yeah.
Keith Mitchell just simply have to ask him, okay, you form the government, how are you doing so and so? So them guys have a lot of work to do. And that will build more than just a wrong. Just let me finish this last point. More than just a wrong Deacon Mitchell, because we don't have a presidential system in Grenada where the president wins and everybody wins the election. To win the government, 8 people from your party have to win their seats. So, and guys, you need to advise them. They guys have a lot of work to do.
Well, Margaret, go ahead.
No. I was going to agree with Toro actually on the how, and that is something. There are 2 things that always creates problems for everybody: the why and the how. It's always easy to say what, it is easy to say when, it is easy to say where, but when it comes down to the why and the how is where everybody gets stumped. And that is true for every politician. And every time I hear somebody stand up and talk about any program, in my head is always come and say, how? How you plan to do it, how you plan to fund it. It doesn't matter where you are. The question is always, how are you going to do it? Whether it's the United States, whether it's Grenada, whether it's Africa, whether it's anywhere, how are you going to do it? And very often, that is the question they could never answer.
Okay. Daphne, you have anything want to chime in?
Well, I don't know too much about the politics out there, but politics everywhere is the same when you look at it. They have the same face, Somebody wants to win and somebody is hopeful to win. So for me, I would say I would.
Go ahead.
I would say a plan of care, a plan for the purpose. You have to make sure your grassroots are the first people you seek, because they are the ones who vote en masse, the grassroots people. Because the rich and famous are not interested, because they know they will vote at some point in that. But your grassroots people, you must have them in your pocket before you go anywhere else. Start at the bottom line.
So I found that announcement about the technical school in every parish so troubling and so kind-11 political thinking, because not only is it not needed, is that we couldn't afford it right now. We don't have the resources. But even more importantly, you would not be able to put a faculty to do it at the parish, have one in every parish, right? Because we already suffering tremendously from lack of high skills in the areas that they were talking about. So where's that teaching class, those faculty, where are they going to come from? What I thought could be more beneficiary is there's a model in Newark, New Jersey, between the city, state, and it's actually an institution run by the Catholic Church. They have they do actually 4 days a week of school. And on the 5th day, the students go out and work with some of the biggest companies located in the Newark area, whether it's Prudential, the AT&T, whatever the big corporate company. So they have this ongoing, it's a program that's been going on now for about 25 years. But also part of that program, the second year as a high school student, you are allowed to take advanced classes. Not everybody qualifies for it, but a select number of students are allowed to take advanced classes. So by the time they graduate in 4 years, they also not only just graduated with a high school diploma, but they graduated with an associate degree in one of the liberal arts or history, or generally not too much in the science area. But what it does, it gives inner city kids the opportunity to get 4 years of education and an associate degree at cost, free. I don't want to use the word free because, the people's taxes are paying for it. So then for a family struggling, they may just have to find money for an additional 2 years for that person to complete their bachelor. And I think something like that, a pilot program, can be rolled out in Grenada, because we kind of had that program back in the 70s and early 80s when a select number of schools had sixth form college. So we can revisit that and have some centers of excellence. You definitely can't do it in every high school because we don't have the thing. Instead of talking about a technical high school in everything and agro-processing. And the idea that government will be able to find money to agro-processing Grenada now is a pipe dream, because we're not producing the level of raw material to I mean, even though if you have a lot of smaller plants that are available, 40 years ago, you get a plant. I remember we went to Bulgaria and they gave us an ice plant and we were all happy and jolly and thing. And we came back to Grenada, and when the numbers run, and I don't mean to laugh about this, but when the numbers run and they look at the minimum capacity of the ice that plant produces in a week, it was 4 times the amount of ice that Grenada consumes in a year. And just the energy to operate the plant, quietly was announced we were getting this big ice plant. It was quietly just shelved and never accepted. So the other thing that Keith Mitchell is really good at, and I saw that in the 2013 and 2018 election. This guy knows where every vote is in every single village. That's for him. I mean, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party in the United States and other major, it would be envious of his turnout political machine, So I'm not saying that they cannot win, but just criticizing and saying everything that he's doing is an election gimmick is not going to be an answer to the thing. You're gonna have, and I have not seen any really bold new initiatives, right? And sadly, the people who are now gravitating around this new leadership are not people known for big bold ideas. So we're for me, this is more than just party right now. It's about country. So what do we do? What do we do? We seem to be coming up on losing generations after generation after generations of people, because the opportunities are not there.
Yeah. Again, as I said earlier, we need, for Grenada to move forward, we need to pool our talent. There's not enough talent in any one group or any one political party. NDC doesn't have enough.
Yeah.
Totally by itself. NNP doesn't have enough. GFA doesn't have enough to pull sports together, or the Swimming Association. We're a small country, 110,000 people, right? And unless we get that thing in our head where we need to work together, we don't always have to agree. We don't have to be in the same political party. But there's some issues we need to work together on. Grenada has not had national consensus on anything for a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe since the revolution, right?
Yeah.
None of the political parties, in my memory, working on election, going to Grenada for election, has ever conceded defeat in an election in Grenada. None of them has ever come out and say, yes, I've lost, congratulations, new leader. Even if you don't mean it, we'll work together. Everyone who loses says there was fraud, or there was cheating, or there was OBR, or there was money in a hat or money in a t-shirt, and the campaign continues until the next election. So what they do is they keep their supporters believing that we didn't really lose, the TFOS. So they keep campaigning for 4 or 5 years, and then they lose, and the next party come in and say the same thing. Like we have to break that. We have to break that cycle. Otherwise, we're going anyway.
Yes.
It
sounds like Trinidad.
I have 2 first-hand of the best OBS stories you would have. Right? there's this lady in my village. I mean, I grew up enormous respect for this woman. She was a close friend of my mom, person who can pull me and scold me, and at the same time, when she think, you protect me a little bit from my mom, say, give him a chance, enormous respect. I do not go to Grenada without going and sit down on the porch and talk to her, give her a hug.
Like there will be a story.
Yes, and here get my. So I think it was the 2018 election. I was there and I went to pay my respect, and we sat there, and she was very dismayed. And by the way, what I love about her is that they were GNP growing the time, and my parents were on the other side. But they never allowed that to affect their friendship, They came to our house for dinner, we went over there, just really wonderful people. And she told me, she said, Dad, but you think we're going to win this time? And I said, well, I'm here, I'm trying, She told me, and this is a well-educated woman, And she told me, no, well, I don't think so, because they found a big snake in Batway and snake. And no. Not only that they found the snake in Batway, but the snake swam all the way from Haiti. Okay. I'm not giving you no second-hand information, that the snake swam all the way from Haiti. Batway was the closest point. And that snake is and then I remember the evening before election, they say they're going to have a prayer service. I'm not big on that, but they asked me to go pick up a pastor. I went to pick up the pastor. I didn't realize who I was going to pick up. The person, is a kind of comedic guy growing up, have a lot of fun and everything. All of a sudden, he's the pastor. And the man came, brought him back up. We had a little conversation, driving him back up to the location. And then he came there and he started to pray. And I'm part of there, so I don't want anybody to think that anything, so I'm there. And then he says, we pray that this time no imaginary hand comes in the polling booth and move your hand from making the X for NDC to NNP. He said, because that happened to him the last time. He was in the booth and he was, and I'm like, okay, that's where you guys lost me. I'm done. I'm out. So this thing is real.
It's deep. It's ingrained. Go ahead, Daphne.
No, because I saw that with Trinidad and Tobago's election with Rowley this last time, and I never followed. But some of the things they wrote on social media and the way they behaved, it was deplorable. I actually wrote a letter to the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister, as well as the opposition leader. I said, you all are despicable. It's an embarrassment to watch something from my end, especially when I left the country and they had a good Prime Minister to start you all off. There's no need for all of this nonsense. You all need to get away from this, because some of you all came as indentured laborers, and there are others were actually forced into enslavement. So let's get it straight and start behaving yourself. Don't let a little education confuse your brain. Think about where you are. Think about why you're there, and think about what you're enjoying. I was so upset.
But I mean, you talk about this guy. St. Lucia had an election last year.
Yeah.
And in one of the Sunday sermon, there was a Catholic priest who came out and said there is too much OBI in the election in St. Lucia. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this Glasgow guy used to be in charge of the Anglican Church in Grenada, Archdeacon Glasgow. He's now based in St. Lucia. I don't want to lie, I think it was him. But one of the Catholic priests in a Sunday sermon was saying yes, and he know for sure there's a lot of OBI involved in St. Lucia election. He said it. So it's not just Grenada. It's again, this is handed down from colonial, and we think we over this colonial shackles, and it's right here, messing us up every day.
We're not. I have friends that I know who say that they're anti-colonialists, and if you tell them that this needs to be changed, I had a conversation sometime recently with somebody where we say, oh, you know, it's time to review some of those colonial laws in Grenada. He say, boy, but them thing walking, boy, what wrong with you, boy? But them thing alone, boy, you know.
I know.
And this is a brother who would go, you know, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I mean, I'm with a group, National Reparations Group, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the Queen, I think Edward, one of them, they are going to Grenada this month, end of the month. And we had a meeting a couple of nights ago, and we kind of discussing like how Grenada should handle it, because there were protests in Jamaica, Belize, and Bahamas, right? And we kind of worried what Grenadians will do, whether they'll come out as they used to do all the time with their little flags and waving for the thing, which would kind of look odd. I mean, what's wrong with us? Yeah. I mean, the country that had a revolution and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and there are a lot of people in high profile position who love that thing. They're ready to take pictures with these people, put out the red carpet. You know what I mean? It's a kind of weird kind of situation with us, particularly in Grenada. Grenada is a very conservative society. Yeah. Apart from that blimp in 1979, we are very conservative. Trust me, there.
I got a lot of pushback because I suggested that I said it both with Hillary Beckles. I said, you know, I'll start to take him seriously because he's on.
He drops that title.
When he drops that title. And you would not believe the pushback I got from some folks. You know? And I'm like, listen, you telling me, and listen, the guy has presented some really groundbreaking research and made some good, but you can't seriously say that and then want to covet that sir, or what Barbados have done by putting somebody as your first head of state, your first sort of homegrown head of state, but she's a dame. So I mean, you know, so we have problems. Yeah. Anyway, guys, we got about 5 minutes to wrap up. So I don't know.
A quick. Let me add something quickly. All those orders that you get from United Kingdom and France and these places, have you ever looked at them closely? All of them has a beautiful star and a foot on the neck of the person down that's on the bottom there. Pay attention to them. Go and look at all those things that the British gave us. Yeah. Every one of those awards and pins that they put on you, it's written and it's written, the Latin meaning is that they have conquered us. Yeah. And on the bottom, you'll see the foot of the soldier or on the neck of a slave lying down.
Yeah. Well, I think the Jamaica
they got rid of theirs.
Jamaica Governor General recently stopped wearing his because
he should.
And there was a post about six months ago, if I'm correct, that shows what the Grenada Governor General wears, that pin that she wears all the time. And it's exactly that. It's of a British soldier or knight or whoever with his feet on the neck of what was supposedly a slave. And that means, you know, it means conquering. There's no.
That's right. They counted you, and once you keep those things in your pocketbook, and you think you have something so great, so people started getting it back. I had a couple of them on my because my grandfather had a few things, you know, and when we look at it, and then I went back and checked. I researched it, and then I put it on my pages.
That's why for me, whenever I go to London, I mean, I love the town for its history and And when you have time, if you go to London, you know, there's so much records you can go through, certain places, certain museums, certain societies that you can visit and have access to so much information. But I have such mixed feelings about being in that place, such mixed feelings. And you know, my brother took me to, and I have brothers who have lived there for 50 plus years, took me the last time only briefly to this almost secret society where, and I was reading some materials and I became exasperated inside there, and I had to leave. I told him, no, I have to leave. I can't, I can't. I said, I didn't come prepared for that. I'm only here for 6 days. Let me enjoy the trip, when I have some more time, I think. But so yeah, this colonial thing is not going away. It's not going away. It's really embedded. It's really embedded in many of us.
And that is why Megan ran for her life.
And I get criticized too, because the other I was talking to somebody about that, and he said, but Dell, every time I see you, you're dressed in a jacket like you. So I say guilty, I say I'm guilty.
What you have to tell him, the Moors ruled Europe before them. And look at the dress of the Moors. I tell them.
Yeah, I have a friend, it's funny you say that, because it's a friend of mine who is always ready to throw the Moors at them.
I do. I said, hey, wait a second. I'm part of the Moors, okay? We were there before.
All right, guys. Well, we were just about to wrap up. This was a very good conversation.
And Lady Tex didn't talk to us today. What happened, Tex?
I know, right? She just sat there and smiled.
She was the engineer. She was the engineer.
No, she was just looking pretty, like the Americans say. You look so pretty.
we had to talk Tex this morning to coming on tonight, because Tex, even though she comes from a real political family, her father was, Tex has avoided politics like the plague, but she's becoming more accustomed to that. So glad to have her on.
I've been trying with her. Ask her.
She loves to, when it comes to politics. If there's anything else, she's at the center of the conversation. But when it comes to politics, for right now, she says she loves to observe and listen.
Like talking about Will and Chris, she likes to talk about that. I heard that this morning.
Listen, I have never been. I don't hate Will. I don't have that kind of thing. That's not how I was made. But I've never really been a fan of his. But in the early '80s, when Chris Rock was still trying to find his leg as a comedian, he worked next door. I used to be working an assistant manager at one of the Woolworths in Rigo Park, and he worked 2 doors down at the Red Lobster. And he was even funny then, from time to time when we worked late, we would go in there in the night, and sometimes he would be there and always give a joke. I never thought he was going to become that big, because he was a skinny, scrunchy little kid then, But he would, from time to time, he would even come into the Woolworth with his mom to buy stuff. So I'm Team Chris all the way, just because of that little my very scant connection to celebrity, But I like him, and I think he's funny. Over the years, I actually went to one of his shows in Washington, drove down from New York to go to a show in Washington. I think that was 95 or 96. So hopefully they can find, like he said he's going to speak about it, and it's going to be funny. It's going to be serious, but it's going to be funny like hell. So I guess he's putting his material together,
Mm-hmm. They're brothers, and they should settle their differences.
That's not going to be settled. That's over. That friendship is over.
That friendship is over. I think there are people, there are reports that guys on Chris's team was ready to go after Will that very night, you know.
Yeah.
And
Will is gonna get you planners. You're gonna get to you don't slap an adult and you don't spit on them. Yeah, don't do it. Yeah, you don't do that. That's out of bounds. Yeah.
It's funny. There's this song that keeps playing in my head every time I think about it. Kenny Rogers, The Gambler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
and throw the slap is considered worse than a punch.
Yeah. I mean, listen, a slap is an insult. I mean, you put you down. I mean, but I get a punch and you rock back. But a slap is you're less than human. You understand?
I was trying to figure out how was Chris able to so quickly compose himself?
I think it was shock, right? Yeah. He was taken by surprise. You know, you and I have been in traffic and somebody gets hit by a vehicle and the person gets up. You know, they were hit hard and they say, I'm okay. And they're walking around. Yeah. But you know, they are just dazed, you know? Yeah. And I think Chris was just stunned. He couldn't react. He was frozen, right? Yeah. But these people are talking about size and thing. Listen, you get a slap like that, you forget whether the person is bigger than you, whether you'll win the fight, whether you lose the fight, whether the police is there. You automatically fight back, right? Yeah. And Chris was just frozen. Frozen. I mean, that's all. You understand? The automatic reaction is a fight back. So Chris was just frozen. None of us expected that, not even Chris. So when he got it, he was like, wow.
But I had to see, the funny thing is, I had to see it in replay because I literally just walked away to do something else and I'm hearing Chris Rock in the background. And by the time I come back here and I pick back up my phone, I see somebody write something on Facebook. So I'm like, what happened? I see me go online. I'm like, if I get online, that was about like 5 minutes after the thing. The whole place was blowing up. 5 minutes later, the video was there, the full thing. I was like, wow.
Yeah. I didn't see it because I normally don't like award show. I find they are phony. I find they are phony. They are too long, and everybody comes up and give the same speech. Thank God, thanks my dog, thanks my cat, my mom, and I didn't expect them. Most of the people know they were going to win. Will knew he was going to win that award, right? I mean,
they generally make the predictions based on previous awards that's went before. So yeah.
But the fact that he knew he was odds on favorite to win, right? And he had been nominated twice before, right? He was nominated for Ali, and then I think he was nominated again where he played that black Nigerian doctor with the NFL thing, right?
Yeah.
So he was odds on favorite to win.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about alopecia. I'm thinking of Jada's sickness. Because you don't make fun of anybody's sickness.
But the question is, did he know?
But did he know? And
they all knew.
But somebody sent me a tape, a thing with Will Smith over the years making fun of similar situation of women.
Yeah.
So. But my thing is that given that he knew he was odds on favorite to win,
he shouldn't have reacted that way. They're both wrong.
That happened at that point in time that made him think that was okay to do that. That was his best reaction.
I think it was just
there's another guy who put out a video today, a black guy. Another black guy put out a video today, and he was saying, if you take the line Chris gave, right? G.I. Joe is actually a woman in the movie.
Exactly.
That be the odds. And the guy said,
exactly.
G.I. Joe is actually a hero woman, right?
Yeah.
Chris never mentioned alopecia, you understand? No. And this guy said, if you take it as Chris put it on, one line, G.I. Joe is a woman who overcame odds. Right?
Yes.
So he said he can't understand
it was a compliment.
G.I. Jane. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, understand? So we can't psychoanalyze Will. We'll have to deal with that thing. And as the guy said in the same video, Will's career as an actor is over. Nobody's hiring Will, not now. Maybe down the line to act in a movie. His career as an actor is over. Nobody wants him. They're going to stay far from him. He's over. But these guys won't be friends again. You don't slap somebody and try to make up with them. That is over.
All right, ladies and Toro, thank you very much. I hope I did good by John and everybody else on the panel tonight.
John just lost his job, man.
Exactly.
No. I like to play the protagonist from the sideline. I'm not very comfortable being the moderator. I like.
You did good. Don't worry.
I like throwing.
It was excellent. It was excellent.
Throwing things in the middle.
Text is going to give him the bad news. Text is going to let John know the bad news that he's been dethroned.
I don't know. I think it was a comedy show I was looking at, and one of the comedians say when they ask him it was a her, and they ask her if she doesn't think about what she says, and she said, "No, I like to hear it. I like to hear it for the first time, just like you hearing it. So I don't think I do that." I like to throw from the sideline, but this was a really good conversation. I enjoyed it, and let's do it again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Thank you, Tex.
Bye.
Thanks, Tex.
Right,
thanks, you, Lincoln. Margaret, take care.
Night.
Thank you, Daph. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Point on Gemfm with Delbert Baptiste.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good night, guys.